Welcome in. It's the Monday Scorecard presented by Encore Golf. I'm your host, Travis Fulton. Thank you for making us part of your day. I hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving with family and friends. But you know what? We turned the corner now. It's Monday, it's December, and it's time to look ahead to the holiday season and the Christmas tunes galore everywhere you go. I love it. I love the holiday season, and we've got some good golf on the slate as well for the month of December. Starting this week, the Hero World Challenge, hosted by Tiger Woods. Next week, we head down to Australia for the President's Cup, and then finish up the calendar year back in Naples, Florida for the QBE Shootout. I want to start this week with Jason Day. Now, if you haven't heard, Jason Day has withdrawn from the President's Cup, which is a real bummer because Jason, of course, is an Aussie in the President's Cup being played down in Australia. The reason for withdrawal has been his back. His back once again has flared up, and his doctors have recommended for him to shut it down. No play and no practice. Now, this is not the first time that we've seen Jason Day struggle with back pain. This has been going on for a period of time, and you may recall just earlier in the year at Augusta in April, he almost didn't make his first round tee time. In fact, he had to withdraw at the Arnold Palmer Invitational because of back pain. And as he got to Augusta, it seemed like things were going well, but he was locked up. He almost didn't make his first round tee time. And I can remember, I think it was his chiropractor or his physio out there working on him just to get him through the round of golf. But point being is that Jason Day has been struggling with his back issues for quite some time. Now, over the last week or so, this has really opened up some debate here. A lot of teachers weighing in, a lot of people having an opinion on Jason Day's back issues. Is this swing related? 100% swing related? What percent do we need to put on Jason Day's swing that is leading to this type of back pain? And I want to start with this. I mean, first and foremost, I'm not a doctor, right? I'm not going to sit here and say that I know 100% without a doubt, here's why Jason Day has back pain. I think it's fair to say that back issues, chronic back issues, go well beyond how you swing the golf club. And I do think Jason Day probably fits into that category to some degree, much like a Freddie Couples and other players that have gone through this chronic back pain. But the way you swing the golf club has something to do with that. The way you swing the club, especially as you get older, has some relevance to this back pain. And I think even the Jason Day camp has admitted this, right? Because there seemed to be a sense of urgency just a few months back with his team, and particularly his coach Colin Swatton, around making some changes to Jason Day's swing. Colin talked about having to turn the right hip more. Jason would get a little lateral with his hip, sliding to the right, and his spine would then lean to the left. And it sounds like some of that was leading to some of Jason's issue. But I think the discussion goes even well beyond that, as a lot of teachers and people have weighed in. So as we kind of dig into this a little bit, I want to share with you a little breakdown here on some of the specific points that are really being called into action here in Jason Day's swing that could be leading to some of his back pain. Check this out. And now let's take a closer look here at the swing of Jason Day, 12-time winner on the PGA Tour, and a swing that is being called a bit into question here on, is it leading and contributing to some of the pain that Jason Day is feeling in the lower back. And I want to call attention here to a few specific areas, starting with the right knee. Look at his right knee. That knee is going to stay flexed all the way to the top of the swing. Hip to the knee, down to the ankle there. You can see he hasn't let that right knee straighten up at all. Now, that's going to restrict the hip turn, and it's going to get the pelvis and the hips to sit more level to the top of the swing. Now, this can be problematic, right? This is resistance in the lower body. Jason struggles with a little bit of a sway in the lower body to the right, which can get the spine leaning to the left, and that can't be very good on the back. But in addition to that, you can see the left arm a bit upright, not a lot of depth, and Jason's always been a player, I think as a result of this, where the shaft comes down a bit on the steep side. This camera angle is a little high. If it was a bit lower, you would see the shaft right in between the forearms there. The shaft coming down a bit steep, which causes him to have to take on a fair amount of side bend to the right. The spine's really having to tilt to the right through the impact zone to help shallow out that club shaft. And now here's Jason at the top of the swing. And I want you to watch the head here as he starts down. That lower body is going to really move kind of excessively lateral to the left. And that's one of the things that you'll see when players restrict in the right knee, the pelvis stays level, they launch. Right? They kind of push off and launch. The lower body outraces the upper. And then the spine really has to take on, as you can see here, a fair amount of side bend to the right. Look where the belt buckle is and look where his chin is. A lot of tilt to the right, extension in the spine, and all of that is putting a fair amount of pressure, I would imagine, on the lower back. So I think some concern here. I think the Jason Day camp knows it. His coach, Colin Swatton, the doctors, I'm sure, are looking at all of this, and some changes I anticipate are going to have to be made towards this direction, addressing some of these components to relieve some pressure off of the back of Jason Day. You know, it's an interesting time right now for Jason Day, 31 years of age. He's had a terrific career to this point, 12 PGA Tour wins. Of course, he won the PGA Championship, won the Players' Champ as well. So, it feels like some things need to change. Regardless of the past, some things need to change for him right now, and it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And a man that knows it well and is inside that camp is Colin Swatton, who I mentioned has been with Jason for a long time. And Colin has agreed to come on to the Stripe Show podcast this week. So we'll catch up with Colin, get some more insight on what's happening with Jason Day, and some clarity on what these changes specifically will be moving forward into the 2020 campaign. And moving on to another player who had an injury himself, Dustin Johnson. He has withdrawn from the Hero World Challenge, but will be playing and representing the United States down in Australia for the President's Cup. I am excited to see what Dustin Johnson has in store for us, not only at the President's Cup, but in particularly the 2020 campaign. Brooks Koepka, we know, is playing at a super high level. Those two are tight. Brooks has now taken the #1 spot in the world. Rory McIlroy, another bomber out there. He's playing great. Here comes Jon Rahm. Here comes Tiger Woods. What does Dustin Johnson have as an answer? He's part of the Bash era here, right? This guy can nuke it. He's accurate. He can overpower a golf course. A little setback there with the meniscus in the left knee. So I'm interested to see how he's doing and what he has in store for the 2020 campaign. And no one knows that answer more than one of his coaches, Allen Terrell, who's the director of coaching for the Dustin Johnson School of Golf up there in South Carolina, one of the top teachers in the game. Allen, I can't thank you enough for joining us here on the Monday Scorecard. But before we get to DJ, I just spent some time here, and hopefully you got to watch it, a little bit about Jason Day, right? A lot of conversation and debate right now on Jason Day. He has had a ton of issues with his back, a lot of back pain, and the way that he swings the club and the role that that's playing in his back pain. I'm curious on where you come down on that regarding with Jason Day's swing and his back pain.
A lot of conversation going on about Jason Day's swing and kind of his pattern, how he's done things. Obviously, a lot of success early when he was younger. That pattern is kind of for a younger, super fit person. I'm not a fan at all of knee flex in the backswing, or the maintenance of right knee flex in the backswing. It's not that causes the injury or the difficulties in lower backs. It's what it makes you do coming through the golf ball. So, we know that if the right knee maintains its flex, there's a good chance the hips are turning a little too level. The right hip, the pelvic doesn't get any inclination. Usually in that pattern, you'll see the player push hard off their right foot early in transition, and they're too left too early. Their left hip gets high too early, and then they've got just a tremendous amount of second access tilt or a lot of right side bend coming through. So again, I know JD when he's young, and he's playing great. It would be hard to change that, but long term, I would love to see him start to lose that flex in that right knee, even let his left heel come off the ground a little bit. But for most of our lessons on the tee, you do not want to keep your right knee flex. We want to get rid of that knee flex, get a bigger pivot, get that club swinging further from the golf ball, generate some speed.
All right, let's get to your man here. Dustin Johnson, currently number 4 ranked player in the world. I anticipate a little bit of rust here from DJ. He hasn't played competitive golf in quite some time. We're going to see him at the President's Cup. But my excitement really is into the 2020 season and what he has in store for us. So I guess the first question is how is the knee doing? Are you guys having to make any adjustments to the swing there? I know it was kind of a meniscus issue. And maybe give us some insight on some things that you guys are working on, the maintenance of the swing. I know you're always trying to keep things intact for Dustin Johnson, so not only can he get it out there with great power, but accuracy as well to hit that nice little cut shot. So how are things going?
So DJ is doing good after his surgery, a little procedure, a little scope of the left knee. So nothing really to work around technically in a swing. So we continue to work on the same things, and it's always based around, no matter how we do it, it's based around making sure that his handle doesn't get too far forward at impact. I know for the laggers out there that misunderstand the lag word, they may not understand that, but for him or for anyone, that just shifts the low point forward. Attack angle can go up or go down, quite a bit. So, and then we're starting to get some distance issues. So a lot of maintenance on that. So things we would do, kind of reverts around his lead arm. That can get too vertical. And then when he opens up, which is so important for his function, that he can start getting some toe strikes, which is now, for a guy who's wanting to cut it and he's on the toe now, it's a straight shot. So very not a good day on the range when that's happening. So we do some maintenance on that left arm. He likes to take it out because that feels cutty to him, and he likes to cut it. But the key is that he doesn't lower his chest when he's kind of getting toward P4 or at the top of his swing, because the lower his chest goes to the ground, meaning the more he flexes forward, the more his arm is going to go up. Now, why that's important is then the higher the vertical of the arm, the more this happens, okay, the more flexion. And actually that position, if you took that back down to the golf ball, the face is actually open. People think, oh, his club face is closed. Not really. I mean, he's got a actually somewhat of a weak grip sometimes. So again, maintenance of the left arm, because when the left arm goes up, he's going to start sliding more. You're going to see a lot more right knee, a lot more active right knee to try to shallow out that left arm, if you will. And you're going to see a lot more right side bend. So instead of changing those things, because it's a powerful pattern, we try to maintenance all of those little issues. And, it's kind of worked over the last 10 years on tour. But there is some maintenance to that. And, if he sticks to his maintenance plan, he's pretty consistent.
Well, you mentioned that flexed or bowed lead wrist, and that can be problematic in short game if you don't do some things to kind of work around it. The leading edge can get kind of caught in the ground. And you look at Dustin Johnson, right? We think of him as a power hitter, overtaking golf courses with his length. But his short game is improving and is really, really good. You look at it back in 2017, he was 58th in strokes gained around the green. 2018, he was 33rd. 2019, he's 38th. I mean, this guy is consistently in the upper tier of best short games on the PGA Tour, and not surprising because he's one of the most dominant players in the game when all of the pieces are in place. What are some things that you guys do in the short game to kind of work around that flexed lead wrist to make sure that Dustin has all the shots that he needs?
So a lot of the short game work we do with DJ, if you look at his swing, that wouldn't be a great pattern for around the greens. When that lead wrist flexes, you're taking the bounce off of the golf club, and then you're gonna see a lot of tilts and a lot of things that try to expose the bounce. So that's why you see him, maybe more than most players, set up for somewhat of a stock shot with a more of an open club face, just because that adds the bounce. It's not to hit cut lobs or anything. It's more for him to expose the bounce. So, let's say he opens it 12-degree bounce, opens it up and gets 20 degrees. And then if he does happen to flex or his right wrist gets a little more on top, then the net bounce is still okay and his strike patterns will be good. But we do work super hard on adding some rotation, actually, of the forearms for him early. A little less drag. We try not to get a lot of width with the handle and pitching. We try to keep the handle fairly close feeling for him and start trying to get the right arm to feel like it rotates a little bit more early. So he gets a little more of a toe up look. And again, that's just to make sure that leading edge is out of the way so he doesn't start to tilt back with his pitches, okay? Because, you get to Augusta, they're going to mow that turf, and you got a lot of ingrained chips, believe it or not. So you really work on things. So when he's in that ingrained pattern, he's in a position where that leading edge is causing him some difficulties. Bunker game's really improved over the last few years, and it's the same thing. We're trying to get him a little narrower, if you will, going back, so a little earlier right arm fold and softer arms. I don't even care if he feels like his left arm bends, just so he kind of starts to push that all back out and gets a little wider angle attack with his bunker shots. But it's all about bounce with him, controlling bounce and working on things that gets that leading edge out of there.
All right, Allen, I got to ask. I mean, you're close to Dustin, you're a coach. And I've said many times, no one changes putters perhaps more than Dustin Johnson. It would be nothing to see him with a completely different look, right? If he's with a blade one week, a mallet the next, a completely different putter the next. I mean, he is not afraid to make changes. So I got to ask, bear with me, I apologize. That's got to drive the coach crazy, doesn't it?
DJ switching putters issue. Oh boy, yes, it's a pain in my butt. But he's a boss, and he writes the checks. But I did have a little tally going there his rookie year on tour, and it's kind of like a candy store out there. Your first year, you got all these trailers, and let's try this and that. It can't be my technique. Must be the putter. And then he settled down. He's played for a blade for a long time, the same style. Had a lot of wins, and then switched to a spider one year, actually at Crooked Stick, and won that first week with it. So he got a lot of confidence in that style putter. So he's about 50-50 probably wins with the blade and the spider. But definitely, as most coaches would probably, definitely would like to see him stay with one putter and work on his technique. But like he tells me, he's like, Coach, it's like a girlfriend. Sometimes you got to let her know there's other options. That's DJ. Got to love him.
Well, I appreciate your honesty, Allen, and your insight. As always, congratulations on all your success. I know you and DJ have been around for a long, long time, and I feel like perhaps the best is yet to come for Dustin Johnson in the 2020 campaign. He's already had a Hall of Fame career, but I just feel like, Dustin Johnson coming off this injury here, Brooks Koepka, his run, here comes Rory, Tiger's back. I've just kind of always felt that, Dustin is a player that can maybe get a little complacent and bored, perhaps with going on around him, and you're out there traveling, you're one of the most elite players, you have athleticism through the roof. I think it's just easy, for Dustin, maybe even Rory at times, to get just a little bored, with what's happening. And I've always felt that when you can get those players' peak attention, right, when they are fully engaged, they are fully motivated, what can they do? And I think with Dustin Johnson, considering the career that he's had up to this point, I just got a feeling that he's motivated, his interest is peaked, he's ready to go, and I expect big things in the 2020 campaign for Dustin Johnson. And, hopefully, everything's kind of settled down even with the coaches as well. Allen Terrell is in some ways kind of the behind-the-scenes coach with Dustin. When you see him on TV, it was with Butch Harmon for a long time. Butch, of course, not traveling, not teaching as much. Now Claude Harmon has been out there. There was a period at the end of last year where those two split, but then Claude showed back up on the lesson tee with him again. So, it's an interesting dynamic there between those two. Claude kind of out there on the tour with Dustin, traveling with him on the range, and then behind the scenes, back in South Carolina in the studio, Allen's in there, doing all of this work and making sure that things are in place and the maintenance in the full swing, the short game and the putting, as he alluded to in the interview. So Dustin Johnson, big year. You heard it here first on the Monday Scorecard in the year 2020. Thank you so much for joining us here. The Monday Scorecard. We will be back next week, but until then, tonight, Monday Night Football, the Hawks, baby. Let's go.